My parents gave my 6-year-old daughter an empty box on Christmas morning. It was wrapped in glittering snowman paper with a perfect red bow, and my mother handed it to Lily with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, while my nephew Leo was tearing through his 15th gift, a drone that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. My daughter was carefully, hopefully, unwrapping a box full of nothing. She needs to learn gratitude, my mom laughed, a brittle sound that scraped against the festive music playing in the background. My daughter, my sweet Lily, looked up at me, her lower lip trembling, her brow furrowed, in that way she does when she's trying to solve a puzzle she doesn't understand. She held up the empty cardboard box and whispered, her voice a tiny, wounded thing. Mommy, what did I do wrong? I didn't cry, I didn't scream. The part of me that used to do that had been burned away years ago, cauterized by 1,000 smaller paper cuts of cruelty. Instead, a profound and terrifying calm settled over me. It was the kind of stillness you feel in the eye of a hurricane, a moment of absolute clarity before the world is torn apart. I took the box from her small hands, folded the festive paper neatly, and looked directly at my mother. 2 days later, they were panicking, their frantic calls lighting up my phone like a desperate SOS. But by then, it was already too late. I had found the weapon I needed, and I was finally ready to go to war. Family politics are their own kind of landmine. You spend your whole life learning where to step, memorizing the terrain of passive aggression and unspoken rules. My family's map was simple. My sister Jessica was the sun. The rest of us were just planets, expected to orbit her gravitational pull, basking in her reflected glory and never ever casting a shadow. She was the golden child, the one for whom the rules bent and broke. I was the scapegoat, the responsible one, the one who was always too sensitive or making things difficult. I remember when I was 10 and she was 8. I had saved up my allowance for 3 months to buy a beautiful porcelain doll I'd seen in a shop window. It had blue glass eyes and real auburn hair. I kept it on the highest shelf in my room, a precious, untouchable treasure. Jessica wanted it. She didn't ask, she demanded. When I said no, she threw a tantrum that shook the house. The next day, I came home from school to find the doll on the floor of her room, its face cracked and one leg snapped off. When I confronted her, crying, she just shrugged. It was ugly, anyway. My mother's verdict was swift. You shouldn't have been so selfish with it, Sarah. You know how your sister is. You provoked her. I was sent to my room for upsetting Jessica. I sat on my bed, holding the broken pieces of my doll, and learned a fundamental lesson. My feelings didn't matter. My property didn't matter. All that mattered was keeping the peace, which was just a code word for keeping Jessica happy. This dynamic solidified as we grew up. Jessica got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass and a lecture on financial responsibility. She went to an expensive private college on our parents' dime, changed her major 4 times, and graduated with a degree in communications and a minor in campus social life. I worked my way through state school, juggling 2 jobs to pay for my tuition and rent, earning a degree in accounting that felt as practical and unglamorous as I did. When I met my ex-husband, my parents were lukewarm. He was a good man, a steady man, but he wasn't wealthy or flashy. He didn't fit the narrative they wanted. When Jessica married Mark, a man whose personality was a cocktail of smug entitlement and cheap cologne, they threw a wedding that could have funded a small nation. They gushed about what a power couple they were. The fact that Mark's family money was old and his business acumen was non-existent was an inconvenient detail they chose to ignore. My marriage ended quietly, amicably. We were just 2 people who wanted different things. But in my family's retelling, it was another one of my failures, a blemish on their perfect family portrait. Jessica's marriage, despite its obvious cracks, the way Mark spoke down to her, the way she flashed her credit card like a weapon, was upheld as the ideal. They had Leo, the golden grandchild, and the cycle began anew. Leo could do no wrong. His tantrums were spirited. His breaking a family heirloom was boys will be boys. My daughter Lily, however, was held to a different standard. She was expected to be quiet, polite, and perpetually understanding. If she cried, she was being manipulative. If she didn't want to give Leo her toy, she was being selfish. Just like her mother, every holiday was a masterclass in this corrosive dynamic. Christmas was the main event. For years, I'd watched as Leo was buried under a mountain of presents, while Lily received a few carefully chosen, sensible gifts, a book, a sweater, maybe one toy that was clearly less expensive than any of Leo's. I'd tried to compensate by making our Christmas at home a magical affair, just the two of us. But the mandatory gathering at my parents' house always cast a long, cold shadow over the day. I'd tried to talk to my mother about it once, a few years back. I approached it gently, carefully. Mom, I've noticed the gifts seem a little uneven. Maybe we could set a price limit so things feel more fair for the kids. Her face had tightened, the pleasant mask slipping. Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. Jessica and Mark have more money. They can afford to be generous with Leo. Besides, she added, the killing blow, Lily is a much calmer child. She doesn't need all that stimulation. It was a classic piece of her emotional judo. My concern for fairness was twisted into an accusation of jealousy. Lily's gentle nature was weaponized as a reason to give her less. There was no winning. There was only managing the loss, swallowing the bitter pill of injustice, and trying to shield my daughter from the shrapnel. I would plaster a smile on my face, praise Leo's new gadgets, and tell Lily that what mattered was being together. A lie I told myself as much as I told her. Because in my family, potato salad was mandatory, but feelings were optional. The appearance of a happy, cohesive unit was everything. The truth, that we were a dysfunctional system of enablers and narcissists built around the fragile ego of my sister, was a secret we all silently agreed to keep. I played my part for years. I was the dutiful daughter, the accommodating sister, the mother who taught her child to be grateful for crumbs while her cousin feasted on cake. But watching Lily hold that empty box, her innocent face clouded with a pain she couldn't name, a pain I knew all too well, something inside me finally snapped. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break. It was a quiet, clean fracture. The peacemaker in me died in that moment, right there on the beige carpet of my parents' living room, surrounded by the ghosts of Christmases past. In her place, something cold and hard and clear began to form. A resolve. I was done managing the loss. I was done playing by their rules. This ends. Now. That Christmas day was the longest of my life. I went through the motions, a ghost at the feast. I helped clear the wrapping paper. I complimented my mother's dry turkey. I listened to my father and Mark talk about sports, their voices a dull drone. I watched Jessica preen, taking photos of Leo with his hoard of toys, curating the perfect image of a perfect Christmas for her social media. Every smile she flashed felt like a personal insult. My daughter stayed glued to my side. She didn't cry again, but a light had gone out in her eyes. She just held my hand, her small fingers clutching mine like a lifeline. When it was time to leave, the goodbyes were strained. My mother, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, tried to pull me into a hug. "It was a wonderful day, wasn't it?" she said, her voice bright and false. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, rigid. "Lily was hurt, Mom." She sighed, a put-upon sound. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It was a joke, a lesson in character. She needs to learn that she can't always get what she wants." A lesson in character. The words echoed in my head as I buckled Lily into her car seat. They weren't teaching her character. They were teaching her that she was worthless, that her feelings were a joke, that the people who were supposed to love her most were the ones who would hurt her for their own amusement. And I had let it happen. For years, I had let it happen. The drive home was silent. Snowflakes melted against the windshield. Lily fell asleep, her face peaceful in the soft glow of the streetlights. I looked at her, my heart aching with a fierce protective love that felt like it could burn the world down. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. I had been so focused on surviving my family that I hadn't realized I was leading my daughter into the same emotional minefield that had crippled me. That night, after I tucked Lily into bed, I didn't sleep. I sat in my small living room, the lights of our own Christmas tree blinking softly, and I thought. I went back over every slight, every dismissive comment, every casual act of cruelty. I wasn't just collecting grievances, I was collecting evidence. I was building a case in the quiet courtroom of my mind. The years of being told I was too much, while simultaneously being treated as not enough. The constant financial comparisons. The way my achievements were minimized and my struggles were magnified. And then I thought about the house, my parents' house, the house I grew up in. It wasn't actually their house. It belonged to my grandmother, my mother's mother, Eleanor, but that wasn't quite right either. I had a vague memory from years ago, a conversation I hadn't fully understood at the time. It was after my great-aunt, Eleanor's sister, had passed away. There had been paperwork. My parents had been annoyed about something about a trust, A cold thrill, sharp and clear, cut through my exhaustion. What if? The next day, the 26th, I told Lily we were going on an adventure. I drove us 3 hours to the city where my grandmother Eleanor lived. I hadn't told her I was coming. I just showed up on her doorstep, my daughter's hand in mine, a desperate hope churning in my stomach. Grandma Eleanor was the real matriarch of our family. 92 years old, with a mind as sharp as a shard of glass, and a spine made of pure steel. She had always seen through my mother's manipulations, her relationship with her own daughter, a cool, distant truce. She adored Lily, and she had always treated me with a quiet respect that felt like a balm on my wounded soul. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed white hair gleaming under the porch light. She took one look at my face, then down at Lily's, and her expression hardened. "Get in here, both of you!" she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Inside her immaculate apartment, which smelled of lavender and old books, I told her everything. I didn't cry. My voice was low and steady. I told her about the years of slights, the constant favoritism, and I ended with the story of the empty box. Lily sat on the plush carpet, playing quietly with a set of antique wooden blocks Grandma Eleanor kept for her, a silent living testament to my story. When I finished, Eleanor was silent for a long moment, her blue eyes fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder. Her hands, surprisingly strong and dotted with age spots, were clasped in her lap. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. "The house!" she said finally, her voice like stones grinding together. "It's about the house, isn't it?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't know," I whispered. "I remember something about Aunt Carol's will. A trust for me? I was so young." Eleanor nodded slowly. She stood up, moved to a heavy oak secretary desk in the corner, and unlocked a drawer with a small silver key she wore on a chain around her neck. She pulled out a thick leather portfolio. Her movements were deliberate, precise. She was a woman who understood that ink beats opinions. Truth was not a feeling, it was a document. She laid the portfolio on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were official-looking papers, yellowed with age, filled with dense legal text. She tapped a finger on the top page. "My sister Carol never trusted your mother, or your father, for that matter. She thought they were weak and foolish. She loved you. When she was dying, she set up a testamentary trust. She left the house to you, Sarah." My breath caught in my throat. "The terms were specific," Eleanor continued, her voice cold and factual. "The trust owns the house. You are the sole beneficiary. Your parents were named as live-in custodians, permitted to reside there rent-free for their lifetimes, under one condition: that they maintain the property and pay all taxes and insurance. They have no ownership. They cannot sell it. They cannot borrow against it. Upon my death, as the executor, the trust dissolves, and the deed transfers directly and irrevocably to you." She paused, her eyes locking with mine. "I am 92 years old, Sarah. My bags, as they say, are packed." My mind reeled. All those years, I had walked into that house, feeling like a guest, an intruder in Jessica's kingdom. All that time, it had been mine. Mine. The foundation under their feet, the roof over their heads, was mine. "But that's not all," Grandma Eleanor said, her voice dropping lower. "I have a friend who works at the county records office. A few months ago, I had her do a search, just a feeling I had." She slid another document out of the portfolio. It was crisp and new, a copy of a mortgage line. "They took out a home equity line of credit 3 months ago," she said flatly. $150,000. They forged your signature as the trustee. Bank fraud, mail fraud, a whole host of felonies. I wonder what they needed the money for." The question was rhetorical. I knew exactly what it was for. The new pool Jessica had been bragging about all summer. The angel investment in Mark's latest disastrous business venture. The lavish trip to Italy they took in September. They had stolen my inheritance, my daughter's future, to fund my sister's perfect life. For a second, the rage was so pure, so absolute, it threatened to swallow me whole. It was a white-hot fire in my veins. But then I looked at my grandmother's face. She wasn't angry, she was satisfied, like a general who had just been handed the enemy's battle plans. This wasn't a tragedy, it was ammunition. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A slow, cold smile spread across Eleanor's face. It was a terrifying and beautiful thing to behold. "We don't get angry, darling," she said. "We get a lawyer." The next morning, December 27th, Grandma Eleanor and I sat in the polished mahogany office of Arthur Vance, Esquire. He was her lawyer, a man in his late 60s with a shark smile and eyes that seemed to see right through you. He was exactly the kind of man you wanted on your side in a war. I retold the story, this time with the legal documents spread across the vast desk between us. Arthur listened without interruption, his steepled fingers resting against his lips. He examined the forged signature on the mortgage application with a small magnifying glass, humming a little tune under his breath. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair, which sighed in protest. "Well," he said, the shark's smile widening, "this is what we in the legal profession call a slam dunk. Your parents, and likely your sister and her feckless husband as accomplices, have committed multiple felonies. We have them on bank fraud, wire fraud, and forgery for a start. The bank that issued the loan without due diligence is also on the hook, which they will not be happy about." He looked at me, his gaze sharp. "The question is, Miss Evans, what is your desired outcome? We can pursue criminal charges. They would almost certainly face jail time. We can sue them into oblivion in civil court. Or we can use this leverage to achieve a more tailored result." I thought of Lily's face on Christmas morning. I thought of the years of quiet humiliation. Jail time felt almost too easy. It was a state-sanctioned consequence. I wanted something more personal. I wanted them to understand, on a cellular level, what they had done. I wanted them to lose what they valued most: their home, their status, their carefully constructed image. "I want the house," I said, my voice clear and strong, "and I want them out of it. I want the money they stole repaid, in full, with interest." Arthur Vance beamed. "An excellent choice, clean, efficient. We can avoid the messiness of a criminal trial. This becomes a simple real estate transaction, albeit one with a rather nasty backstory." Over the next few hours, we formulated the plan. Arthur explained that the forged mortgage was the bank's problem to unravel, but the underlying theft was my parents'. We would draw up a settlement agreement. It would be brutal and non-negotiable. First, they would have to immediately sign a quitclaim deed, relinquishing any and all custodial rights to the property and transferring the title to me directly, dissolving the trust ahead of schedule. Second, they would have to liquidate their assets, retirement accounts, stocks, whatever they had, to repay the $150,000, not to the bank, but directly to me. The bank could chase them for the fraudulent loan separately. That was their mess. Arthur called this the penalty. Third, they would be given 30 days to vacate the property. "And what if they refuse to sign?" I asked, the old familiar fear flickering. "Then I will personally walk these documents over to the district attorney's office," Arthur said cheerfully, "and I will hold a press conference on the courthouse steps. The choice is theirs: public humiliation and financial ruin, or public humiliation, financial ruin, and a prison sentence. People tend to choose the former." My grandmother, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "They're having a New Year's Eve party," she said, a glint in her eye. "Their big annual affair. All their friends will be there, everyone they want to impress." Arthur Vance leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Oh, that's just perfect! Theatrics are so important in these matters." Leaving his office, I felt lighter than I had in years. It was the feeling of a weight leaving a body, a burden I didn't even realize I had been carrying. The truth wasn't just a weapon, it was a key. It was unlocking a cage I had been in for 35 years. During this time, my phone was blowing up. First came the text from my mother. "Where are you? You're worrying us." Then, the passive-aggressive guilt trips. "I hope you're not still sulking about that silly box. You're ruining the holidays." Then came the calls, dozens of them. From her, from my father, even from Jessica. I didn't answer. I let them all go to voicemail. Their rising panic was a distant, satisfying hum. Funny what urgency does when it's tied to money and exposure, not to a child's broken heart. I spent the next few days with Eleanor. We took Lily to the park, to museums, to a fancy tea service at a hotel. I watched my daughter laugh, really laugh, for the first time since Christmas. She was resilient, my girl, but I knew the wound was still there. This wasn't just for me, it was for her. I was showing her that you don't have to accept cruelty. You don't have to make yourself small. You are allowed to fight back. On the morning of December 31st, Arthur called. Everything was ready: the quitclaim deed, the settlement agreement, a meticulously documented file containing copies of the original trust, the forged mortgage, and a sworn affidavit from a handwriting expert confirming the forgery. He had also prepared a notice to vacate. It was a neat little package of destruction. "The stage is set," he said. "Are you ready for your performance?" "I am," I replied, and for the first time, I truly was. I wasn't the scared little girl with the broken doll anymore. I wasn't the peacemaker trying to smooth over every conflict. I was a mother protecting her child. And there is nothing in this world more dangerous. You don't need armor when you have righteous fury. You just need a plan. And a very good lawyer. New Year's Eve. The air was cold and sharp, smelling of snow and wood smoke. My parents' house was blazing with light. Every window a warm golden square against the deep blue dusk. Cars lined the street. Mercedes, BMWs, the preferred vehicles of the suburban elite they so desperately wanted to be. We could hear the murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses from the driveway. I sat in the passenger seat of Eleanor's stately Cadillac, Arthur Vance in the back. I was wearing a simple black dress, no armor, just dignity. My hands were steady on the leather portfolio in my lap. My heart was a slow, heavy drumbeat in my chest. Not fear, anticipation. "Remember," Arthur said from the back seat, his voice calm and reassuring. "Let them talk. Let them dig the hole. We just provide the shovel." Eleanor looked over at me, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "Your great Aunt Carol would be very proud of you tonight, Sarah." We walked up the stone pathway I had walked a million times before. The front door was wreathed in twinkling lights. For a moment, a wave of nostalgia hit me. Memories of running through that door as a child, of Christmases that were happier, or at least seemed so through the hazy filter of time. I pushed it away. That house wasn't a home. It was a stage for a long-running play, and I was finally rewriting the ending. My mother opened the door, her face a mask of strained cheerfulness. When she saw me, her smile faltered. When she saw Eleanor and a strange man behind me, it vanished completely. "Sarah, we were so worried! And Mother, what a surprise! You didn't say you were coming?" Her eyes darted to Arthur. "And you are?" "A friend of the family," Arthur said smoothly, stepping past her into the foyer. The party fell silent as we entered. About 30 faces turned to look at us. I saw my father, looking flustered, a glass of champagne halfway to his lips. I saw Jessica and Mark, standing by the newly renovated fireplace, looking smug. I saw aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole cast of flying monkeys who had always taken my parents' side. My father hurried over. "Sarah, what is this? You disappear for days, and then you show up like this?" "We needed to get some things in order," I said, my voice surprisingly level. Jessica slinked over, her red sequined dress shimmering. "Well, you have terrible timing. You're ruining the party." She gave Arthur a dismissive once-over. "Who's your friend?" "This is Arthur Vance," Eleanor announced, her voice cutting through the awkward silence. "He's my attorney, and Sarah's." A ripple of unease went through the room. The word attorney has a way of sucking the air out of a party. My father's face went pale. My mother's hand fluttered to her throat. "An attorney?" my mother stammered. "What on earth for?" This was the moment, the opening. Arthur gave me a slight nod. "We're here to discuss a real estate matter," I said, my gaze fixed on my parents. "Specifically, this house." My father scoffed, a weak, nervous sound. "What about the house? It's our house." "Actually, it's not," I said. I opened the portfolio and took out the first document, a copy of my great Aunt Carol's will and the trust agreement. According to this, the house has been held in a trust for me since 1998. You're the live-in custodians, not the owners. The silence in the room was now absolute, thick and heavy. You could hear the fizz of champagne bubbles dying in their glasses. My mother's mouth fell open. Jessica looked back and forth between me and our parents, a confused, angry frown on her face. That's a private family matter," my father sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "This is not the time or the place." "I think it's the perfect time and place," Eleanor said coolly, "since so many of the people you borrowed money from to fund your lifestyle are in this room." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. "But it's the most recent transaction we're here to discuss," I continued, my voice gaining strength. I pulled out the next document, the copy of the mortgage application. "This $150,000 line of credit you took out in September. The one you used to pay for the new pool and to fund Mark's brilliant startup." Mark went rigid. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked at our parents. "What is she talking about? It's a lie, my mother shrieked, finding her voice. She's making it up. She's always been jealous, always so dramatic. Is this your signature? Arthur asked, stepping forward and holding the document out for my mother to see. He pointed to the line where my name was crudely forged. Is this Sarah's signature as trustee? My mother stared at the paper, her face draining of all color. It was the pale face moment. The instant the lie dies and the horrible naked truth is exposed. She looked cornered, a rat in a trap. My father just stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew they were caught. We were going to tell you, my mother cried, her voice rising hysterically. It was just a loan. We were going to pay it back. By committing bank fraud? Arthur asked mildly. That's a novel repayment plan. The district attorney will be very interested to hear about it. The mention of the DA sent a fresh wave of panic through my parents. Jessica looked like she was going to be sick. Prison? She whispered, horrified. That is one possible outcome, Arthur confirmed. However, Sarah is prepared to be lenient. She is offering you an alternative. I placed the final 2 documents on the marble-topped coffee table, the quitclaim deed and the settlement agreement. You're going to sign the house over to me tonight, I said, and you're going to repay the $150,000 you stole from your retirement funds, and then you have 30 days to get out. The collective gasp from the room was audible. This was no longer a private dispute. It was a public execution. You can't do this, Jessica wailed, turning on me. You're throwing them out of their home, our home. You're ruining our lives, all because you're bitter about some stupid Christmas present. I finally looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, just a profound, bottomless pity. This was never about a present, Jessica, I said quietly. It was about my daughter asking me what she did wrong. It was about you and Mom and Dad teaching her the same lesson you taught me, that she is worth less, that her feelings don't matter. Well, the lessons are over. Her feelings matter. And this house, I patted the quitclaim deed, is her future, a future you tried to steal. My mother started to sob, loud theatrical sobs designed to garner sympathy. We're family! How can you be so cruel? You gave my 6-year-old an empty box for Christmas to teach her a lesson, I said, my voice as cold as the winter night. Don't you dare talk to me about cruelty. I turned to my father. Sign it, or Arthur makes his phone call in the morning. My father, broken, picked up the pen Arthur offered him. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely sign his name. My mother, seeing it was truly over, snatched the pen and scribbled her signature, her tears leaving wet blotches on the ink. The verdict was in. The sentence had been passed. Arthur notarized the documents with a portable stamp he produced from his briefcase. He handed me the executed copies. It was done. I turned to leave. The guests were frozen, avoiding my eyes, trying to pretend they weren't there. As I reached the door, my mother made one last, desperate plea. Where will we go, Sarah? What will we do? I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and looked back at the ruins of their perfect life. I don't know, Mom, I said, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're very resourceful. Then I walked out the door with my grandmother and my lawyer, and I didn't look back. The cold night air felt clean, fresh. It felt like freedom. The aftermath was as swift as it was brutal. The news of what happened at the party spread through their social circle like wildfire. My parents became pariahs overnight. The friends who had sipped their champagne and admired their renovations now crossed the street to avoid them. The shame was a consequence more potent than any jail cell. They tried to fight it, of course. A few days later, a lawyer they couldn't afford sent Arthur a blustering letter. Arthur sent back a 1-sentence reply, along with a copy of the forgery analysis. We never heard from their lawyer again. Jessica and Mark's world crumbled too. Without my parents' financial backing, Mark's startup collapsed within a month. They had to sell their oversized house in a panic, moving into a small rental apartment. Jessica called me once, screaming and crying, accusing me of being a monster. I listened for a moment, then I said, "Goodbye, Jessica," and I blocked her number. My parents vacated the house on the 30th day. They didn't go quietly. They left it a mess, a final petty act of defiance. But it didn't matter. It was just stuff. I hired a cleaning crew and a team of contractors. We gutted the place. We tore out the gaudy fireplace, painted over the drab beige walls, and let the light back in. The money from their liquidated retirement accounts appeared in my bank account exactly 29 days after the party. It felt like stolen treasure being returned to its rightful owner. I paid off the fraudulent loan to clear the title, and the rest went into a trust for Lily, her future secure. We moved in that spring. The house was transformed. It was bright and airy and filled with laughter. Lily's laughter. We painted her room a sunny yellow, and I filled her shelves with books and dolls that were all her own. She thrived. The anxious little girl who clutched my hand was gone, replaced by a confident, happy child who knew she was safe, who knew she was loved, who knew she was worthy. Life became quiet, normal, boring, in the best possible way. There were no more tense holiday dinners, no more walking on eggshells, no more swallowing injustice for the sake of a peace that was never real. There was just us, my daughter and me, and my grandmother, who came for dinner every Sunday, sitting in the heart of the home her sister had wanted for me all along. I never saw my parents or my sister again. I heard through the grapevine that they moved a few states away, living in a small apartment, my father taking a job as a greeter at a big box store. They never apologized. They never took responsibility. In their version of the story, I am sure, they are the victims and I am the villain. But it doesn't matter anymore. Their opinions are just noise from a distant room. The silence I have now is a gift. It's the sound of peace. It's the sound of a generational curse being broken. So, what do you think? Was I right to take back what was mine and protect my daughter? Or did I go too far and destroy my family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories.